What is the best Call of Duty game? It's not the easiest question to answer, I'll admit. We have almost 20 years of history and over 15 titles with massive mainstream success to sift through, each with their own distinct feel, setting, story, complementary game modes. We've been on the beaches of Normandy during the world's greatest conflict, but also in Vietnam during the Cold War, the Middle East in an alternate modern timeline. We've even fought wars in the world of tomorrow, the world of the day after tomorrow, and so on. On the campaign side, we have stories about covert ops, Michael Bay-esque action flicks, commentaries on the ethics of PMCs, and that's barely scratching the surface. Zombies has emerged as the most successful quote-unquote side mode, but we've also seen Extinction, Spec Ops, and Survival mode. And even with Zombies having eventually been adopted by each of Call of Duty's developers, each has given their own unique spin on its formula. Most importantly though, there's the multiplayer. With all due respect to campaign and Zombies players, it's no doubt that this is the main attraction, what many players explicitly buy the game for. If there's one thing this series is known for, it's an addicting, fast-paced, fun multiplayer mode that's friendly to both casual and competitive gamers alike. With the emergence of Warzone, it's likely that Call of Duty's traditional multiplayer mode has taken a backseat to its Battle Royale counterpart, but the former is still undoubtedly what made this series so popular in the first place. Up until Warzone, it was, in my view and that of others, the most important part of any entry in the series. If the multiplayer in a COD game was a dud, chances are the entire game went down as a dud. So as important as the campaign and Zombies modes may be to some people, I'm going to rephrase my initial question to make it more relevant. Which Call of Duty game has the best multiplayer? Answering that question is very easy. You saw the title, it's no secret. Black Ops 2 is easily the fan favorite Call of Duty game. And even if you didn't play the game in its heyday, you can still feel its DNA in most Call of Duty titles these days, whether that be in the form of created class elements, score streaks, or general design philosophy. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Ever since Call of Duty 4 received its remaster, players have been begging for Black Ops 2 to receive the same treatment. People talk about this game with a certain reverence that makes you stop and wonder just how good it really is. Is it really that good? Why this game? Was it all just timing? Another in a string of lackluster Call of Duty entries that just so happened to release at a critical time in our lives? Or was there more to it than that? I feel uniquely qualified to answer this question since I was there when the game came out, and I sank thousands of hours into the experience. I adopted every playstyle, used every gun, reached max prestige several times. I remember what came before and what came after. I've seen it all, and I've done it all with Black Ops 2. This is by no means an attempt to brag though. The thing is, it's not very often where I get to say I've been part of some big shared experience. I see all these big videos on YouTube celebrating the classic games, films, and moments of yesteryear, and what it was like experiencing them back in their heyday. I wasn't there for most of those. I wasn't there for GoldenEye or Counter-Strike or Halo when they first released. I didn't play Call of Duty when the original Modern Warfare hit store shelves and changed first-person shooters forever. I wasn't there for Modern Warfare 2 taking the world by storm either. I missed a lot, and that's just on the gaming side of things. But I was there for Black Ops 2. I remember the climate before the game came out. I remember the community's frustrations with the last couple of titles, and the need for this game to address them. I remember when it did just that, on top of introducing some of the best additions to multiplayer that tend to have been taken for granted since then. This wasn't just another entry in a yearly franchise, it was a great leap forward. I know the phrase ahead of its time is a bit overused these days, and I won't apply it to Black Ops 2 in the context of gaming in general, but as far as Call of Duty titles go, well, I don't think we've seen anything better than this game's multiplayer in the 10 years since. I was there, and if you're in a rush, I'll tell you right now that Black Ops 2 really was that good. If you're not sure on time though, I'd love to elaborate. To tell the story of Black Ops 2's multiplayer is to tell the story of Treyarch, a studio tired of being viewed as second string to Call of Duty's original creators. Many felt their output wasn't on par with Big Brother Infinity Ward. Treyarch's Call of Duty World at War was viewed as derivative. Black Ops 1 was better, but had its own share of big problems. And now even Infinity Ward's reputation had been called into question with the problematic Modern Warfare 3. The community was flustered, but behind the scenes, the team at Treyarch was soaking up feedback on both their last game and Modern Warfare 3 like a sponge. Black Ops 2 would be a statement of authority, allowing the studio to fully emerge from IW's shadow and rise up as talented developers with a finger on the community's pulse. Years of lessons learned, combined with a stellar team and the real desire to make something great, culminated in Call of Duty's greatest multiplayer experience yet. This video is my way of returning the favor. Let's not waste any more time. Black Ops 2 is an incredible shooter with the best multiplayer in Call of Duty history, and here's why. November 11th, 2012. Black Ops 2 is just about to be released to the public. Call of Duty is on top of the world and doing great. Or at least, that's how it looked on the surface. In reality, the series has had a rough last couple years in regards to balancing its multiplayer. Modern Warfare 2's everything is overpowered mentality made playing any match a roll of the dice. Will you be dealing with commando knife-only players this game? Or perhaps a fully automatic shotgun someone was allowed to pick as their secondary weapon? The M45? One-man army? Danger close? There was a lot to drive players towards ripping their hair out, and this needed to be addressed. Then came the original Black Ops. The mission for this entry? Reel everything back in and give players a more consistent, less stressful experience from match to match. And while Black Ops never came close to the levels of frustration the prior game evoked, all was not well here either. In particular, the removal of the classic perk stopping power inadvertently placed the stealth bonuses of Ghost as being most valuable to players. The vast majority of players ran Ghost, and the end result was an extremely slow gameplay experience, especially in modes without objectives. A lot of what made games like Call of Duty 4 so fun to play was the relatively fast pace promoted directly by the UAV, or recon plane, or spy plane, whichever radar sweeping killstreak name you prefer. With most now using the UAV blocking perk, camping emerged as a dominant gameplay style, and in Black Ops' heyday, many matches slowed to a crawl. Weapon balancing didn't fare much either. Guns were technically more competitive with one another, but that was primarily because most of them had near identical stats. It essentially came down to picking whichever guns had the best iron sights and recoil patterns, since damage and fire rate had so much overlap from gun to gun. There was one exception though, the FAMAS. Having the ability to shoot much faster than its assault rifle contemporaries with equal damage, clean irons, and fairly manageable kick, the FAMAS was a clearly overpowered weapon that, even after getting nerfed, is still pretty cheese. Oh yeah, and Second Chance existed. That wasn't fun. Then Modern Warfare 3 comes onto the scene, promising to be Modern Warfare 2 but without all the BS. And mission accomplished goes as far as looking like the exact same game, but boy were there issues. To illustrate, here's what the base version of Ghost did in Black Ops. And here's what the base version of Assassin did in Modern Warfare 3. Needless to say, the aforementioned slow pace problem continued into this game. But there's more. Alongside Assassin being broken on the perk side, SitRep Pro was eventually buffed into giving users insane listening ability, which damn near broke certain game modes. Spawn logic was seriously questionable, the game had its own healthy share of broken weapons, and did I mention the death streaks? Bet you forgot about death streaks, didn't you? Dead Man's Hand? Final Stand? It's all coming back to you, isn't it? It had been a shaky few years for the series, needless to say. While it enjoyed peak popularity, the quality of the multiplayer experience was turning grizzled veterans away. Call of Duty was starting to slip. With Treyarch now at the wheel for the next release, was there any gas left in the tank to turn things around? In their sequel to Black Ops and follow-up title after Modern Warfare 3, Treyarch had their work cut out for them. They would need to address the camping epidemic and slow-paced problem of games past, and ensure proper balance on the weapon and perk side of Create a Class. More importantly though, they would also need to figure out how to keep things fresh for a 9-year-old franchise. It's a lot to ask for a studio, but they had the vision, resources, and expertise to make it happen. I already told you at the beginning of this video that Treyarch succeeded, and with this context out of the way, I am happy to tell you exactly how they did it with Black Ops 2 multiplayer. So forget about a modern day setting. That's been done and dusted. The same goes for World War II, and Treyarch had just finished a game with a Cold War backdrop. Rather, in a series first, Black Ops 2 would be set in the future, the year 2025. Not far forward enough to where things feel too futuristic, but far forward enough to give a high-tech yet high plausibility feel at the same time. Perhaps the biggest consideration for setting the new game in the future was the wealth of freedom it offered developers in designing multiplayer. Released in 2012 and taking place more than a decade later in 2025, Treyarch had a lot more wiggle room to mess around with new inclusions for multiplayer. The most unique additions to the game don't actually exist, but their inclusions remain credible. Some aren't worth talking about beyond the brief mention, but others certainly stand out. A sight attachment that allows you to see through walls and smoke? Equipment that lets you hack other equipment and destroy air support? This is really cool stuff. Beginning our multiplayer journey, we hop into a couple of games and mess around with a handful of the Vault classes before unlocking the Create a Class suite. I like Create a Class. don't you? It lends a great deal of freedom in letting the player decide what kind of playstyle they want to pursue. At the time it was first introduced in Call of Duty 4, the idea of class customization and player progression in a shooter was unheard of, and we have gotten some experimental tweaks since then. Modern Warfare 2 introduced pro perks, Black Ops put equipment into its own separate slot, and Modern Warfare 3 allowed for different point streaks for each class. But since the original Modern Warfare, the same basic framework hasn't changed much. Choose your primary, secondary, lethal, tactical, perk in each category, and you're good to go. Create a class is long overdue for some innovation, and Treyarch is all too happy to introduce this innovation in Black Ops 2 with the Pick 10 system. It's such a quantum leap forward that I don't think we've seen anything quite as game-changing since. With the Pick 10, every weapon, attachment, grenade, and perk in your class is valued equally at 1 point. You have the flexibility of mixing and matching 10 of these items based on your preferences thanks primarily to the introduction of wildcards. These allow for some much needed freedom in how a player designs a class by letting them break the rules, so to speak. Wildcards let you pick an additional perk in one category, a third attachment on your primary, a second primary altogether, and so on. It costs 1 perk to pick the wildcard itself, which balances out the potential imbalance from being able to bend these rules to your liking. A great way of demonstrating just how much has changed is simply building our own class, start to finish, and explaining the thought process behind each decision therein. Let's say you run and gun with the PDW-50, an SMG with a 50-round mag. You equip fast mags to deal with the slow reload, but since the iron sights are clean, and the gun doesn't have any other issues as far as you can tell, you don't need any other attachments. With such a massive clip, high reserve ammo, and now fast reloads, you don't deem it necessary to equip a pistol either, so you skip ahead to perks. You play a lot of domination where it's a constant run to and from flags to defend and capture points. You choose extreme conditioning from perk 3 to get you moving faster through the map via longer sprint duration, as well as flak jacket from perk 1 to make sure a stray grenade doesn't blow you up while you're fighting for these positions. Explosive spam is pretty heavy in objective game modes after all. A little extra speed doesn't hurt when running across the map either, so let's use a perk 1 greed wildcard to grab a second perk 1, lightweight. You also like the idea of having some cover while you cross some of the more dangerous parts of the map or capture flags, so let's throw on a smoke grenade. Let's also grab some semtex so we can try to clear some high traffic areas as we head over. We're going to equip scavenger from perk 2 so we can replenish both of these grenades, plus some ammo in the rare event we ever need to with a gun like this one. We've got 1 point to spare, so let's throw on a laser sight for shooting from the hip, adding to the strengths of an SMG, and we're done. What a solid build. This is the freedom that Pick 10 offers. You are put solely in charge of choosing what to prioritize when making a class. It also rewards experienced players who can forego parts of his class setup that other players may not be able to live without. If you're more than able to use a weapon without attachments, that means you can bulk up on perks, which you might appreciate more. Or if you're fine with just 1 perk and omit 2 others, those 2 points you save can be used to beef up your primary weapon or give yourself a kitted out secondary. It is a perpetual state of give and take. What do you value? What can you afford to give up in other areas to get more of what you value? Pick 10 finally gives players a level of choice in designing their class that just wasn't there before. Critics of Pick 10 might say that assigning the same point value to every item is a little silly. How could an SMG be worth the same as an attachment for a pistol, for example? On the surface level, there might appear to be some meat to this argument, but to criticize the value of any one item seeks to undermine the entire point of Pick 10, which is to let each player determine the value of each item on their own. We can go into brass tacks and analyze how one item or type of item is better than the other, but at the end of the day, the player that chooses to play with any piece of kit has, in that moment, decided to value it over the others. Placing primaries is worth 2 points, secondaries 1, grenades half a point, what have you, defeats the entire purpose of the system, which is to let each and every player decide for themselves what matters most. The only weakness Pick 10 may present here is related to grenades. As valuable as they are, grenades are normally one and done and essentially mandate scavenger to truly justify their inclusion for streaky players. Some sort of recharge timer that lets players use the grenade repeatedly would serve to remedy this issue, and it is exactly the solution that would come along just a few years later. Future Treyarch titles would tweak and expand Pick 10 in largely positive ways to make it even better, but for how much things click together and work in this initial inclusion, I cannot help but applaud Treyarch for a job well done. There is an ocean of options available for players looking to make unique builds. I want to be a sneaky James Bond style ninja diffuser in search and destroy games, with a pimped out pistol and high-tech gadgets to boot. I need to get to my target bomb site quickly but quietly, and I can't let anyone see me on the way over there. Stealth is key. I'm that guy who's always making sure anything airborne is put out of commission. I need an anti-air launcher, but my LMG has armor-piercing rounds to help take out air support if need be. It doesn't hurt that FMJ also helps me shoot through walls and I mow things down, which only adds to the strength of my gun. I'll throw on fast hands to make sure I can switch quickly between the two, plus toughness to stay on target when getting shot at. Let me get a quick draw handle to aim faster with this unit of a gun for good measure. I need blind eye so that I don't get shot at by these choppers, as well as hardline so I get my score streaks faster from clearing the skies and getting kills. Wait, score streaks? What are those? I'm glad you asked. Almost as game-changing as Pick 10 is the introduction of score streaks. One of Call of Duty's main draws at this point has been reining in death and dominating a lobby with an expansive array of rewards one receives for going on a streak of kills. However, these kill streaks left many objective-oriented players out of the fun. It incentivized those looking to get the rewards to go solely for kills and nothing else. Modern Warfare 3 did make some steps in the right direction with point streaks, which awarded players for team-oriented tasks such as shooting down air support and capturing flags. But at the end of the day, this one or none system wasn't enough to truly prioritize objective play. It was nice to see players finally being rewarded in some capacity for doing right by their team, but there was a lot of stuff in between kills and capturing objectives that just wasn't taken into account. That all changes with score streaks. Killed an enemy while capturing a domination flag? Score bonus. Killed enemies inside a hardpoint and captured it? Score bonus. Shot down enemy air support? Varying score bonuses depending on how big of a threat you destroyed. Are teammates getting a multitude of kills while your UAV shows them where to find the bad guys? You deserve a piece of that pie. Black Ops 2's score streak system finally rewarded team players fully, across the spectrum, for their commitment to playing for the team and not just for themselves. Every team-oriented activity you can think of now contributes in varying degrees to your score streaks. Concussing enemies, jamming enemy radar, assists, destroying equipment, the works. The score streak system also allows for score streak kills themselves to count toward a player's next score streak, but at a much more reasonable rate than in games prior. You see, Modern Warfare 2 and 3 weighed killstreak kills the same as any other, which led to a ladder system of sorts. Players used a Predator missile to get a Harrier, to get a chopper gunner, to annihilate lobbies. You had a very good shot of getting an 11 killstreak reward with only 5 real kills, so to speak. Black Ops made the right decision in walking this back and only allowing non-killstreak kills to count, but Black Ops 2 puts things just right. Score streak kills do count, but usually only for a fourth or about a seventh of a kill. The best of both worlds. Makes sense to me. This is also the first implementation of any streak system in the series where you can pick any 3 streaks. It's a small thing to point out, but previous games restricted players from choosing 2 streaks that require the same amount of kills or points. In Black Ops 2, no 2 streaks require the exact same amount of score. So, like with Pick 10, there's more in the way of player choice on offer as a result. There were a couple of ways to exploit the score streak system, tapping hard points being one of the worst examples, but for its debut inclusion, it is incredibly robust and rewarding, and I cannot applaud the team enough for it. Pick 10 and the score streak system are obviously massive changes to the status quo, but for something like Pick 10, that massive improvement applies only on paper. If a given perk, or weapon, or grenade is too powerful, much of the effort spent curating a system like Pick 10 would have largely gone to waste. You'll be happy to know then that this Call of Duty game made the most robust balancing choices of any game in the series up until that point. Ghost? Assassin? These are annoying perks and they both promote camping. Let's make it so that the perk is only active when the player is moving or playing the objective. Genius. This instantly brought the perk back in line with its peers and brought the fast flow of action back to the game. And just for good measure, Treyarch made the very last item unlocked in the leveling progression. Bravo. Even with Commando gone after Modern Warfare 2, there were still a lot of crazy lunges that made players react in not so friendly ways. Let's nerf the knife drastically, signaling its purpose as a true last resort and balancing out the only free inclusion in the Pick 10 system. No more crazy kill cams, everyone's using their gun again, problem solved. There sure were a lot of perks that had an impact on your gun, weren't there? Let's convert those same perks into attachments and make sure they only impact gun performance, while perks only impact character performance. Smart move. Let's put these 2 perks into the same tier to make total stealth builds a little bit harder to pull off. Let's do the same for these 2. And while we're at it, let's implement these 2 perks and how they interact with each other the right way. Nice touch. As far as balancing the guns themselves, well, nobody's perfect, and this is the one issue that rears its head into every multiplayer game. Technically speaking, one gun is always the best, at least in its category, and Black Ops 2 was no exception. Regarding outright broken weapons, the game really only had one at launch, and it was due more to a technicality than anything else. One of the game's new inclusions was a select fire attachment, which allowed players to switch between 2 firing modes for their weapons on the fly. For a weapon like the FAL OSW, this meant being able to fire a 2-hit kill semi-automatic rifle at fully automatic speed. Broken to say the least, even if I don't personally remember it being all that prevalent. It was nonetheless fixed in a couple of patches after release. These same patches also tweaked balancing in other weapon categories, but dare I say, apart from the FAL, I don't think there was anything as broken or overpowered as a Type 95 or FAMAS or UM45. You could get into specifics, crunch numbers, and determine that the MSMC is the best SMG and the M&A1 the best assault rifle, but it's still possible to put up a solid fight with other weapons in their class. I'd say this was especially true at the end of the game's life cycle, after all balancing tweaks were made. Another issue that the studio overcame with their balancing decisions was weapons feeling too samey in past titles. Now each and every weapon provides a unique enough experience to justify its inclusion in this game's arsenal, and I really do mean unique. A lot of these guns break away from what we've come to expect from each annual release in this franchise. A pistol that fires shotgun shells, an LMG that shoots faster for the first few shots than after, a 4-round burst-ish shotgun, and all are balanced well enough for players to perform adequately with all of them. To illustrate my point about variety, take a look at the SMGs. You have the MP7, a jack-of-all-trades SMG that has okay recoil, damage, and fire rate, but a decent clip size and best-in-class reload speed. The PDW, as mentioned before, is a slower firing SMG with a 50-round mag. You can pull off a 3-hit kill at really close range, but you've got a good deal of kick and the reload speed leaves a lot to be desired. The Vector, as overlooked as it is, boasts the best recoil in class as well as the cleanest irons, but it pays for this by being average or even subpar just about everywhere else. The Chi-Comp CQB is a series first burst fire SMG. You can't kill in one burst, but the rate of fire is extremely fast and the burst delay is non-existent, so it has a quick time to kill regardless. This one was really fun. The MSMC is a slow-firing SMG with a weak mag size and okay recoil pattern. It makes up for this with the strongest damage in class, however. And lastly, the Scorpion Evo is a shredder, shooting way faster than anything else in its category, and it's not even close. Unfortunately, its range is weak, and having a mag size of just 32 and something that shoots as fast as this will have you reloading and looking for ammo frequently. Rattling off these weapons with their strengths and weaknesses, it's clear that there is a different enough experience offered by each weapon to justify its inclusion in the overall catalog. It doesn't hurt that, again, they are mostly well balanced. Some may be better than others, but you don't have some guns objectively obsoleting the use of others, as had been the case in the previous 2 entries. In short, if you know what you're doing, you can do well with every gun in the game, and compete well enough against the absolute best ones in the meta. I have neglected to mention map design up until now, and this is another area where Black Ops 2 sought to perform a bit of streamlining. Fixing Ghost was a good first step, but to speed things up some more, Treyarch decided to simplify the maps as well. Just about every map in the game has 3 lanes, and an area in the middle where the 3 can intersect for players to battle it out. Any previous problems with dark corners for players to hide in are now gone, along with camping strategies now being a lot harder than before. In prior games, maps tended to have a particular building or corner that was very easy to defend because of a singular entrance or climb leading up to it. Now, just about every camping spot you can think of has at least 2 entrances, making it much difficult for, shall we say, immobile players to hold them down. At the time, this led to a massive jump in the amount of action you'd experience each game. It was what the series needed. And it was clear that Black Ops 2 had now fully embraced the arcadey aspects of Call of Duty more than its predecessors ever did. Call of Duty devs have always had to deal with a tug-of-war between implementing realism or arcade elements, but I think leaning into the latter is the better choice, and Black Ops 2 is much better off for adopting it. The maps themselves are set in colorful and creative locations without much concern for players asking why they're fighting on, for example, a cruise ship. Just have fun. Part of what made the next Call of Duty title, Ghosts, so appalling to players a year later was how far the other way it went compared to Black Ops 2, with incomprehensibly large and confusing maps featuring depressing and lifeless locales. What a downgrade. Now, most maps were just fine, although there were still a couple of stinkers. And while it did speed gameplay up dramatically, it's fair to mention that the layouts of these maps often favored SMGs, shotguns, and assault rifles, with little in the way apart from a singular long-ish sightline for snipers and the like to duke it out in a few maps. These maps aren't particularly well designed for long-range combat, putting aside a couple of DLC maps. This is a problem that persists with later entries, and Treyarch's 3-lane system would eventually be overused to the point of fatigue. But the initial integration across the board with just about every map, along with far more frequent map symmetry, was welcomed at the time. But it somehow doesn't end there. Black Ops 2 introduces a variety of quality of life improvements and small changes that illustrate the level of polish and detail this studio was committed to. To start, weapon camos now have a suite of challenges that don't just involve getting headshots. Some of these challenges differ depending on the weapon class to make sure the task is appropriate for what you're using, while others are more general tasks for you to accomplish before unlocking gold. Either way, by the time you finally unlock that shiny gold camo by having completed all these tasks, it feels like you've earned it through legitimate effort. Getting a bunch of headshots is one thing, but the fact that I have demonstrated my prowess by going on kill streaks, getting kills without attachments, without perks, what have you, makes gold camo feel more like a badge of honor than ever, as it should. Medals aren't necessarily a new inclusion, but were mandatory to separate score earned and experience earned from various actions throughout a match. Medals are a streamlined and effective way for players to see how they contributed in a match beyond their ending score. The team should also be applauded for providing appropriate experience bonuses for certain tasks. Everyone who plays Domination knows that capturing B at the beginning of a game or round is no easy feat, so it's nice to see a hefty XP bonus every time you manage to do so. Just another way Treyarch incentivized playing for the win beyond score rewards. I love it. Game modes themselves have also seen some small tweaks and improvements to boost quality of play. Domination, for example, now switches sides 5 minutes into the game to ensure lopsided maps don't always end in a victory for the team who spawns on the preferred side. It's not a perfect implementation, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. The round timer in Search and Destroy has been cut back by 30 seconds as a means of keeping things moving, and as a result, players no longer have a lot of time to cozy in and camp around for kills. Games now orient a lot more around the objective. Similarly, Kill Confirmed was also changed to make confirming kills worth more score-wise than the kills themselves. I cannot tell you how much this sped the mode up compared to Modern Warfare 3. I'm also a big fan of how challenges were given a surprising amount of thought in this game. This time around, Treyarch grouped challenges together by category and added a mastery element to them. By completing all challenges related to a specific category, you'd get a unique calling card. I'm a big fan in particular of challenges related to various game modes. Past games didn't have much in the way of challenges for these apart from win 50 games of Team Deathmatch or defuse 10 bombs in any bomb-related game mode. Now, each mode has its own unique set of tasks to accomplish that make the Mastery calling card feel like just that. To become a Search and Destroy master, I had to win games, show up at the top of the scoreboard, plant bombs, detonate them, defuse them, clutch the round as the last man standing, and more. Like the revamped gold camo requirements, this was a really cool way to show off your prowess, seeing as some of these mastery cards had some pretty steep requirements. Black Ops 1 was a big success with making the game a faux social media platform as the developers described it, and it's great to see them expanding upon those ideas in its sequel. Expansions were made to the emblem creation system and theater mode of their last game, and Black Ops 2 even gave you the option to livestream. It's funny looking at it now, but you can appreciate the effort considering this game was released at the same time streamers were starting to blow up. There was even a little media sharing platform called COD TV where players can see what was being shared by others in the community. It was a nice touch. Player progression feels a little more purposeful in Black Ops 2, seeing as the unlock token system meant players could not unlock everything all at once in one prestige. Rather, if they spend all their tokens, there are a select few items that they simply don't have access to. It's a good incentive to prestige if they want to explore playing with these pieces of kit, and each prestige gives them just a little more to hold on to with one permanent unlock token. When players do finally reach max prestige, all items are fully unlocked, and it feels like a proper reward for a long journey of leveling. This is a big one. The inclusion of League Play lets players battle in competitive maps and modes with all unlocks available. This game also introduced the first Codcaster mode, albeit a very primitive one. Ridiculed at the time for being such a big point of focus from Treyarch, the support for competitive play in Black Ops 2 is a massive part of why COD esports has only thrived in the years since. This is a small one, but this is also the last Call of Duty game to feature more than 2 factions in its multiplayer. Not really all that important, but it was nice to see some different outfits and hear some different voices from map to map.
Execute the traitor. Get that dickweed out of my sight.
Get him the hell out of here.
Shut up, Quinzel. Get him out of my sight. I'm sick of this asshole. Get rid of him. Get that son of a bitch out of my sight.
Second Chance is gone, and we'll never see it again. Death Streaks are gone, and we'll never see them again. Calling in Scorestreaks and the like is lightning fast compared to that clunky phone from last game. The anti-air launcher is unlocked right at the beginning of the Prestige instead of about halfway through like in prior games, making it easier to deal with Scorestreak spam. I could go on, but I think you get my point. Everything in this game, and I really do mean everything, was extremely well thought out and equally well put together. And that's the game. A Call of Duty title with the most impressive improvements to creator class, streaks, weapon balancing, quality of life, you name it. To have had just one of these by itself would have made it a great entry in the franchise. But the fact that it does so well in just about every facet of the multiplayer mode, top to bottom, elevates it to a superb level of quality. It's really easy to take these improvements for granted because most are now baked into the newer titles by default, but you have to remember the context. The series had been struggling with the feeling of sameness, with incentivizing objective play, with weapon balance. Black Ops 2 solved all these problems all at once, and that is something you have to respect. But is that really all there is to say? The game's been analyzed from a design standpoint, and we've learned just how much of the right decisions were made in Black Ops 2's development. But I'd be lying to you if I said that Black Ops 2 is so fondly remembered solely because it was a quality product. That's a big part of it, a huge part of it even, but it doesn't tell the whole story. That remaining 5%, the 5% that elevates the game to legendary status and makes it induce feverish nostalgia, at least for me, is the power of the Call of Duty community. Yes, the Call of Duty community.
Alright, let's go. Hey. Everyone go to contest.
You see, my favorite game mode has always been Search and Destroy. It's a very simple mode where a group of defenders must protect bomb sites from being blown up by a group of attackers. It works on a round-round basis with no respawning. It's an enjoyable mode on its own, but as it turns out, one small twist changes everything. Back then, to prevent possible cheating and or boosting in a mode such as this one, players were not allowed to use party chat on Xbox. The PlayStation 3 didn't have a party chat feature in the first place, so regardless of console, everyone playing Search and Destroy was required to talk within the lobby. If alive, you can only talk to players that are alive, and if dead, only to dead players. It's worth pointing out that this is also the only mode where you can talk to members of the enemy team for prolonged periods of time, when both you and them are dead and waiting to respawn in the next round. Around this same time, YouTube began to be seen as a legitimate career opportunity for those that can build an audience. It wasn't just about uploading videos of your cat with your $2 camera anymore. It was a race for that YouTube money. Thousands of views, subscribers, and dollars were up for the taking if you knew how to attract people to your content. And what better content to provide than Call of Duty commentaries, funny moments, ninja diffuses, and so much more. Call of Duty content had already ramped up in years prior, but around the time of Black Ops 2, things were at a crescendo. Never before had so many content creators, big and small, taken a chance on making content for all to see. The combination of forced game chat and no respawning was a perfect one for content creators who used the game mode as a soapbox to entertain. They cared little for actually playing or winning and tended to die quickly, where they get the chance to perform in front of a live audience, the audience being everyone else dead within that round. It was a lethal combination. Black Ops 2 wasn't the first Call of Duty game with forced game chat and Search and Destroy, nor was it the first to feature those entertainer types in this mode. But during Black Ops 2, the prevalence of these entertainers was at an all-time high. I don't remember encountering many when I played Black Ops 1, there were some here and there in Modern Warfare 3, but it was almost avoidable here in 2025. Every lobby had that guy trying to play off the lobby for laughs. And while I did mention YouTube as a motivator, over time, that didn't seem to matter anymore. People did it just to do it. Gone were the quieter lobbies and uncreative insults of yesterday. Every Search and Destroy match I played now left me with something to remember it by. It may have just been a single mode, but boy was it a popular one. And I have to imagine that forced game chat had something to do with it. Even then, these entertainers started to leak into other game modes as well. There was no escaping it. If you played Black Ops 2 during its prime, no doubt you've got your own set of memories regarding squeakers, dads looking for their sons, people playing off of other people's anger, dudes singing, and everything in between. Search and Destroy began to feel less like a game mode and more like a virtual pub that players dropped in and out of. I have unforgettable memories and I've met some lifelong friends surfing these lobbies, and this is that lightning in a bottle part of a game that you just can't recreate anymore. It was the perfect storm, and if you were there, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. The game itself was a hell of a foundation, but the sense of community the game cultivated, whether on purpose or not, serves as that cherry on top that took Black Ops 2 to the next level. Sadly though, all good things must come to an end. Call of Duty games tend to have a one-year life cycle, but the really good ones live on and prosper past that. Ghosts was such a step backward that a sizable chunk of the player base stayed on Black Ops 2 for another year. Advanced Warfare was a similar story, although to a lesser extent, but Black Ops 3 was what just about emptied the remaining player population. It was the newest Treyarch title, and that now carried with it a seal of quality, important to those that hadn't liked Infinity Ward or Sledgehammer's newer output. Next generation consoles had also been out for a couple of years now, and Black Ops 3 was the first Call of Duty game that could not be made and released properly on both console generations. Those that wanted to play needed to switch over to a PS4 or Xbox One, being that Black Ops 2 was left behind. The passage of time has only made things worse. These days, Black Ops 2 is mostly a vacant, unplayable mess thanks to hackers. Fortunately, Plutonium has given players a way to experience the game more or less the same as it was in November 2013. Assuming you're willing to deal with the occasional massive data breach, no big deal. Having spent a few hours on Plutonium, I can report the gameplay is about as good as I remember. It's still the best Call of Duty game gameplay-wise to me. Regardless, I ended up getting bored after a while and left to do other things. Part of that may just be franchise fatigue, having come from playing so much of this series over the years, but I think it ultimately comes down to me missing the community the most. Search and Destroy is just Search and Destroy now, and even with 12 players in the lobby, things have never felt lonelier. It's such a strange feeling. The maps are the same, the gun's identical, nothing's technically changed, but it's just not the same. We will never be able to relive those memories, the ones we replay in our heads time and time again. Nor will we be able to reconnect with that guy or gal that's been offline since 2014. But we can cherish those memories now, be thankful we have them in the first place, and hope that those we shared the experience with are somewhere out there doing the same. Black Ops 2 was the right game at the right time for hundreds of thousands of people. Part of that undoubtedly comes down to it being a well thought out, well balanced, and most importantly, a really fun shooter, developed by a studio that was at the top of its game. I obviously cannot thank them enough for that, but I'd say what really elevated Black Ops 2 from a game to an honest-to-God cultural experience was its community. So in a way, I should be thanking you. Thanks. I could go on and talk about the game and the people that made it special for another hour or so, but at some point, all I can say is, well, you just had to be there.